Yes.
I'd like to call order the regular Board of Education meeting for the Zumwalt School District. If you'd stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Roll call, please, Frank.
Here. Present. Here.
Erica?
Here.
The record will show that Gabriel Collins is absent.
I need a motion for the adoption of the agenda that you have to read this evening. Howard, second. Callahan, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Recognition, Dr. DeBray.
We have one item of recognition to bring to the board's attention this evening. Dr. Pat Brown, who is well recognized to the board with the books that he's written and the great work he did as a teacher at DeBray Middle School, is now our Executive Director of STEM Education. Jen is going to say a few words and let you know what recognition he's recently received.
Thank you, Dr. DeBray. I'm excited this evening to be able to highlight a dedicated member of our staff, Dr. Patrick Brown. We were notified at the start of the school year that Dr. Brown has been chosen as one of only 17 Project Lead the Way administrators in the whole United States to receive an Outstanding Administrator of the Year award. He joins a very select group of educators across the nation who are being recognized for their enthusiasm and commitment to the Project Lead the Way programming. Under Pat's leadership, we have expanded the 3 Project Lead the Way pathways, which are computer science, engineering, and biomedical science, in all of our 4 high schools. We've also expanded that program to the 4 middle schools, and Pat led all of that. This year, all 4 of our comprehensive high schools earned Project Lead the Way Distinguished Program recognition. There are only 37 in the whole state of Missouri, and we are 4 of them, so that's very exciting. Pat is also the consummate professional. He's a joy to work with, and he's really an excellent ambassador for our school district. We would like to congratulate him on this very prestigious award and thank him for his unwavering commitment to the teachers and the students of the Fort Zumwalt School District.
Can we have a board from the Board of Education to recognize you for all the good work that you've done and how Project Lead the Way has thought about you?
I'd just like to just sincerely thank the Board of Education for having such a strong place in your heart for STEM and career and technical education. I think back to the years 2015 and 16 when we first brought on Project Lead the Way, we had just one course in the computer sciences, biomedical sciences, and engineering in each of the high schools, and maybe served 200 students. And last year and this year we're serving thousands of students in these areas. And the important thing to remember is not only are these areas incredibly engaging and motivating for the students, but these are the highest wage, highest need areas in our community. So we're really doing what's right for the students by offering more programs that align so well with the 21st century skills that kids need and the types of jobs that are in high demand. So I'd just like to thank the board from the bottom of my heart. So I absolutely love my job, and I work with some of the best educators that are out there who really have good kids at heart. So thank you very much to the board, to Dr. DeBray and Jen Waters for the recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. All right, it's time now for comments from the audience. I would like to remind everyone who's speaking that there is a 3-minute time limit. Please keep your comments civil. And what I'm going to do is call 2 names because of the distance to get to the microphone. The first one, Amy Robertson, if you would come forward. And then Jamie Castro, if you could prepare yourself to be the next speaker.
About a month ago, West Middle Team 7-3 elected a young man with profound hearing loss, severe ADHD, and autism as their STUCO representative. Not only did they elect him, but other students running against him actually helped him create his slideshow and campaign posters. When the young man was elected, the entire school celebrated and cheered with him. The students on Team 7-3 and all throughout West Middle understand kindness. That young man is my son Liam. When he came home, he was so excited that I recorded a video of him telling me all about it. I was most touched when I asked him if he voted for himself by his response. I didn't want to be selfish, so I voted for 2 other people, but I still won. In that moment, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that our children are doing better than we are at honoring the 7 habits they are taught in their Leader in Me schools. Part of Liam's excitement was telling me about his plan to create Friday Fun Day, in which he hopes to encourage teachers to create fun and exciting learning opportunities on Fridays for all students to enjoy. I decided to share Liam's video on the FZSD Parent Support page. The video received hundreds of likes and comments. Every single comment was kind and supportive and celebratory of his joy. I looked at who gave likes and comments. There were people who I know are strongly opposed to some of the COVID mitigation strategies that I strongly support. In that moment, we had common ground that we could all celebrate together, regardless of our stance on other things. In that moment, we all understood kindness. To honor Liam, I began posting Friday Fun Day posts on the Facebook page and inviting members of our community to share their good news and accomplishments. I haven't been disappointed by the response. Each Friday, I am reminded that this community understands kindness. Over the past few months, I have personally reached out to and had wonderful conversations with Board of Ed members, county council members, and even some leaders of groups who oppose my view on mitigation. Never once have we changed each other's minds, but each time our minds have opened more and we walk away having gained a greater understanding of one another as people and not just the opposition. My proudest new friendship is with a county council member who strongly opposes my stance on mitigation. We don't always agree with each other, but we value our mutual understanding and growing friendship. During our conversations, we understand kindness. This past Friday, I learned that my kids' homecoming would be moved indoors with no mitigation strategies in place just hours after the mandate was lifted. It was a Board of Ed member and a county council member who don't always agree with my stance who helped create a wonderful compromise and made it so our kids could all enjoy the dance. It only required a phone call because the open dialogue and mutual understanding was already there. In that moment, we understood kindness. It's easy when we're angry to say or do something we can't take back. I myself have had to walk away from a conversation on more than one occasion when I caught myself saying something I would regret or feeling the urge to just be ugly. In those moments, I have had to understand kindness. May we all share our thoughts this evening and in the future in a way that others can come to understand who we are, why we feel the way we feel, and where we can find common ground, because that is what is in the best interest of our children. Please consider a motion to create our own FZSD Friday Fun Day. Let's find time to come together as a community to learn who we are, create new friendships, and discover our common ground once or twice a month. May we all be more like our children and constantly seek to understand kindness.
Rebecca Stripsky, if you could go ahead and step forward and be ready as well. Jamie LaCastro.
Hi. So I apologize tonight. I'm reading this from my phone because of the internet outage, so I had to take a picture of my screen. So my name is Jamie LaCastro. I'm a parent to 2 kids in the district at West Middle and at TCE. I honestly don't have a very eloquent speech, unlike Amy had a beautiful speech. But I'm here because I am frustrated still. Our kids are less safe today in school than they were last week. And I just need to still remind everyone of a few things. That is that the CDC, the AAP, and the Department of Health still recommend that kids be universally masked in schools to protect them and their families from COVID-19. We have lost over 725,000 fellow Americans now from this disease. Furthermore, I would encourage even more transparency going forward. I would love to hear directly from some of the pediatric experts that we consulted. And if they could speak to patrons in their own words, I think that might be helpful to both sides. I would also like to remind everyone that we are still probably about 2 months out from our elementary students being able to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. and I don't understand why we would drop a mask mandate in the interim. I also don't understand the fact that the district is using more mitigation strategies when the best mitigation strategies against the spread of COVID are distancing, masking, vaccinations, testing, and quarantine. The new plan has now removed one of the most successful tools in our box. I would also ask you to make sure to protect our quarantines going forward. Quarantines are incredibly important as we know that COVID-19 is highly transmissible and can be spread by people who don't know they have the virus, whether they're asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic, particularly if they refuse to test. Unfortunately, this seems especially important in our district, where we have people who seem to think it's okay to pick and choose which school rules they are going to follow. I would appreciate it also if one of the board members could propose a motion, or if it could be updated, the policy, the new point about parent volunteers in the classroom. I know I love volunteering in my kids' classroom. I would just think it would be important if those parent volunteers, for the short time that they're in the kids' classroom working closely with students, some of whom might be medically vulnerable, if those parents would be required to mask, I think that would be very important. And finally, since I have a little bit of extra time, I just wanted to speak to some of the parents out there who might be listening online and aren't aware of the, I guess, organized effort to undermine our school board members, school boards across the country, and the public education system in general. There are forces out there that want to destroy public education, and I hope that that's one thing. You all volunteered your time. We're here because we care about our kids. So I just implore people, if public education and teachers are important to you, please stand up. Now is the time to speak up and support them. Thank you.
Tom Rudd, you're next.
Good evening, board members. My name is Rebecca Stricksky. I'm a mom of 3 in the district. I am so pleased that you worked to make the mask optional again, as they should have been all year. As of 2 p.m. today, we have had 4 school-connected COVID cases, 1 being staff and 3 students. That is on the COVID dashboard as of the last week. There is no reason for the unnecessary measures in place for unmatched children to stay out of school if in contact with potentially positive cases. COVID numbers have decreased to barely a notable amount. We are sacrificing many for a literal few. At 3 students out of 18,000, I ask you, when is enough enough? What number are we searching for to be done keeping healthy kids out of an education? My kids are little and they love school, yet I've watched them suffer with anxiety these last 2 years that they don't deserve. I do my absolute best in the home to make life fun and exciting while balancing that sometimes you can't get what you want, and sometimes you have to stand up and work hard for what you want. We struggled with masks and fear-mongering all last year. This year, we all, masked or unmasked, signed up for an in-person school year together. My kids were ecstatic when I told them that they wouldn't have to have a mask on this year, only to have that rug pulled out from under them. This was remedied, and my kids were able to celebrate a victory because Mom was working hard for them, and they knew that to make the change happen. I'm here to keep working hard to continue to allow them to access a fear-free education. Kids cannot be sent home for being around a sick child. Hand, foot, and mouth disease circles the schools every year, as well as cold and flu season. When there's a positive case of those illnesses that are already known to run rampant through classrooms, we get a letter that there's a positive case in the classroom. This needs to be the case for COVID. It is here to stay, and no measures are stopping it. If all the shutdowns, masking, vaccination, social distancing haven't squelched it in nearly 2 years, why would it now? Move on with life. Let my children be confident in their school again. My kids have never had a COVID-free year. Make the change to abolish this charade that anything we are doing is killing COVID. My kids are scared and losing trust that school and teachers have their best interest in mind, and how can I blame them? When all of these
actions are being taken that are against them, while sacrificing our kids. Enough is enough. No more masks, no more quarantines, no more COVID vaccinations, no more COVID restrictions. Sick kids stay home. Healthy kids go to school. As it's always been, we need to start living in a post-pandemic world. Thank you for your time.
Mary Boatwright, you'll be next. Tom, go ahead.
Tom Brock. I have 4 kids in the school district. I'm grateful for the recent mask optional approach, and so I'd like to continue providing some data to support that decision. The NIH, the National Laboratory of Medicine, ran the first randomized controlled trial of cloth masks versus medical masks in a health and safety setting. The results cautioned against the use of cloth masks. Excuse me. Moisture retention, reuse of cloth masks, and poor filtration may actually result in increased risk of infection. Penetration of cloth masks in a study, particles, was almost 97%. The CDC ran a study on the effectiveness of cloth masks for protection against severe acute respiratory symptoms. Cloth masks may be the only option available, they stated. However, they should be used as a last resort. The CDC also stated that the general public should be educated about masks because cloth masks may give users a false sense of protection because they're limited protection against acquiring infection. CDC also said that testing for the best fit of cloth and medical masks and double masking, they found that double masking impedes breathing. Nodding and tucking can change the shape of mask so that it no longer covers both the nose and mouth. In summary, the CDC stated that cloth mask refers to any mask constructed from textiles or fabrics and is not intended for use as personal protective equipment. In a New England Journal of Medicine study, at Paris Island of 3,000 Marine recruits, they were volunteered to undergo a strict 2-week quarantine at home that was followed by a strict 2-week quarantine in a strict closed college campus setting. As part of the study, participants wore masks and socially distanced while symptoms were monitored daily. The predominant finding was that despite the very strict and enforced quarantine, the rate of transmission was not reduced, and in fact, not only was masking ineffective, it was determined that masks made things worse. Recently, Jay Bhattacharya, MD and PhD, professor of medicine at Stanford University, provided testimony before the U.S. Senate that the usual outcome of those infected by COVID ranged from 0 symptoms to a mild cold. The resulting evidence from 61 studies in a recent publication in the World Healthcare Organization, for people 70 and over, the infection survival rate is 95%. For people under 70, it is 99.995%. Lastly, Scott Atlas, a former White House COVID advisor and senior fellow at Stanford University's Houston Institution. The empirical evidence from looking at places that use mask mandates like Miami-Dade and LA County showed no evidence that mask mandate was effective in stopping cases from spreading. In fact, there is evidence that people in the U.S. at high frequency have been wearing masks for months, and the cases exploded in several states like Hawaii and Minnesota. The data shows that masks are harmful to children and they don't work. Thank you.
Is next. Marianne Boatwright.
Surgeons use masks to keep germs out of open wounds. Masks don't stop viruses due to their incredibly small size. Coronavirus is in the cold and flu category and has been around for a long time. It's nothing new except it was made more deadly by gain of function. Kerry Mullis, who invented the PCR test, said it was never to be used to identify COVID. It was never to be run more than 28 rounds because you could find anything in any one. Most positive tests are run at 40. That is why we have so many false positives. Pursuant to Missouri Statute 162.301.1, school board members qualified by taking oath of office prescribed by Article 7, Section 11 of the Constitution of Missouri as follows. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of Missouri, and I will honestly, faithfully, partially discharge my duties as school board member to the best of my ability. Nowhere in the Constitution does it give you authority to forcibly muzzle and quarantine children against their will, or deny children their right to attend school and actually learn. or physically, emotionally, and academically damaged children. Nowhere in the Constitution does it give you authority to put at risk parents' livelihoods and financial future by making them choose between staying home with quarantined children or being forced to quit their jobs. Nowhere in the Constitution does it give you authority to quarantine and further isolate already at-risk students who struggle with depression. You might want to look at teen suicide rates. I submit to you that every board member who voted to forcibly muzzle and quarantine children against their and their parents' wills violated their oath and the constitutional rights of children and parents and taxpayers. I don't believe this board purposely caused the COVID mess, but I do believe you contributed by being focused on getting COVID money. If schools practice mitigation by masking and quarantining, you get money. Even though masking for a virus and unnecessary quarantining is ineffective and unconstitutional, money, fear, power, and misinformation blinded you from the truth. Therefore, I am going to pray for much needed wisdom for this board. Thank you.
Megan Douglas, you'll be next. Christy Hartnagel, go ahead.
Hello, hi. My name is Christy Hartnagel. I'm a parent here in the 4th Zumwalt District. My oldest daughter graduated in 2018 from West High and had successful fulfilling years at Twin Chimneys, West Mill, and West High. My second daughter, Kelly, a student with special needs, graduated in 2021. Her junior and senior years were severely altered by COVID restrictions, which was truly devastating for her, a student who lived every single day to wake up to go to school. In fact, she misses it terribly. My son, Jack, a sophomore here at West, has not had a normal school year since the 7th grade. 7th grade, that's 3 years ago. 8th grade was cut short at spring break. 9th grade was a year of having to muzzle his face all day for the entire day with no dances, no homecoming activities, no parades. And after school, he went to the football field with no mask, playing football. Football, you know, the sport where they literally tackle each other. I reiterate, he had to wear a mask during school, 6 feet apart from other kids, but as soon as the bell rang, he went out and tackled 25 of his teammates. That's some good science right there. Don't get me wrong, I'm a proponent of football and all other sports, just pointing out the genius behind the science. And keep in mind also that these kids get together on the weekends with no restrictions, no masks. And while I'm happy that the mask is currently optional, I do not want to suddenly have them have to wear it again. My focus today and every day is freedom, having the freedom to choose what is best for my child, my children, is my job, not the job of the school board. Your job is to offer a quality public education. I do not co-parent with the government. At the last meeting, COVID statistics were read referring to modified quarantines for mask wearers, non-mask wearers, COVID testing, and so on and so on. 19 months into this insanity, I am literally done listening to the stats. Take a look around. If we were that bad, we'd all be dropping dead from it. I have been exposed several times, and yet here I stand. It's a miracle. Last year, my son Jack had to quarantine after a kid he sat next to tested positive for COVID. On the way out of the door of the classroom as he left for his 10-day punishment, the teacher said to him, "Learn how to wear your mask correctly." He had worn his mask below his nose, and that was the reason for the quarantine. Obviously, the teacher thought her job was to be the mask police instead of actually teaching. He sat at home for 10 days with no symptoms and struggled to keep up with his work online. Personally, I'm done with the tyranny and the constant rule changing, quarantine changes. If you fear the virus, I respect your decisions to wear a mask, get a shot, hide in your house indefinitely, whatever makes you feel safe. However, my rights and those of my children do not end because you are fearful. Most of the country, in case you haven't noticed, is returning to the freedoms we have always had, slowly but surely. I remember a time when cold symptoms were treated with chicken noodle soup, fluids, and rest, not with tyranny. I hereby request and truly hope that the board keeps the masks optional and does not add restrictions such as required vaccines, testing, and quarantine. I honestly can't fathom who runs to the doctor if they have a runny nose or a sore throat, but apparently a lot of people do. We need to get back to a time where parents have the rights to make health decisions for their kids. We can live with this virus without ruining our kids' lives. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Vera, if you would prepare yourself. This is Megan Douglas.
Hi, I'm Megan Douglas, and I'm not here to talk about COVID. school board should worry about is the education of our children and what our children are being exposed to at school. I know it's a different age where they have social media and everything is right there at their fingertips, but recently it has been brought to many people's attention that there's books that were just accepted into the libraries. Here are a few lines from a book that was in Fort Zumwalt School District Library. It's called All Boys Aren't Good. Here's the lines are, he reached into my pants and pulled out my dick and started quickly giving me head. It felt good to have him in my mouth. There are many more sexually detailed lines in this book, and I think as parents we should know what other books were accepted at this time in the library. Who's suggesting these pornographic books to be in the library for our children? Whose job was it to review, to accept these books into the library? Either their job wasn't done or the process is flawed. My children are sent to school to learn science, reading, math, things like that, not sexual instruction, and we expected way better from the Fort Zumwalt School District.
Amen.
April Rivera, Haley Hercules will be next.
My name is April Rivera. I have kids in the elementary school in Fort Zumwalt. I am here to speak on behalf of Maria Wall, who's an internal medicine nurse practitioner who has provided studies to the board that supported mask wearing in school. She's unable to attend as she's running her own regional nurse practitioner organization meeting tonight, where she resides as president. She has included all of the studies cited by a parent at a previous board meeting, which I believe Mr. Brock already spoke, so we can discuss some of those things now if you'd like. They were analyzed and showed that almost every single one of them was unreliable or disinformation. I've included this analysis as well as a color-coded hierarchy of the strength of studies to each of you to help make more informed decisions, actually based on science in the future. Unfortunately, you did not review any of these studies before you made your decision last week. The CDC recommends universal indoor masking for all students, staff, teachers, and visitors K-12 regardless of vaccination status. The American Academy of Pediatrics also recommends universal masking wearing for K-12. I don't really understand how you guys are more experts than the CDC or the American Academy of Pediatrics. There are two cross-sectional studies that are reviewed where mandating face masks had a much lower school transmission and community transmission. There are two cohort studies where COVID infections in schools showed extremely limited within secondary school transmissions by enforcing mask wearing. The anti-mask citations shared were two opinion articles from Fox News. That is not science. Those are opinions. Two studies were cited. They were actually studies of parents, which again are opinions, not science. We are in the middle of a health crisis. We would like to get out of it. The sooner we listen to the science of it and work through it, the quicker we will all go back to normal. One of the things that Mr. Bach actually repeated this evening was a randomized controlled trial about cloth masks, where he cited there was an adult healthcare workers with influenza instead of COVID. So he took an influenza study, and missed that part, and then presented it to you as a COVID study. That's not what we're talking about. Talking about COVID, talking about keeping our kids safe. Opinions should not be deciding factors regarding public health issues. Science, data, and legitimate sources of information should be what guides your decision. It's very disappointing that you have taken away one of our tools that has been clearly demonstrated to help mitigate COVID again. It's my expectation there will not be any further changes to the district's code policy before 12 and under children have an opportunity to be fully vaccinated. Just because we're all done with COVID does not mean that COVID is done with us. Please, our job is to help keep our children safe. Let's do that. Thank you.
Billy Sullivan, if you prepare yourself.
Good evening, Board. Mr. George, I'm glad you were able to find time in your schedule to join us this evening. Our students' academic scores have been and continue to decline due to the lost hours of face-to-face instruction over the past 18 months. Where do your priorities lie? The Board of Education is established to be the checks and balances, but most importantly, ensure academic excellence of all students. You must stay in your lane. It was clarified in DESE's updated guidance that schools do not have the authority to quarantine students. Only the local public health authority does, better known as the St. Charles County Health Department within our jurisdiction. In addition, per DESE's new guidance, the final determination of a close contact, isolation, and quarantine is up to the discretion of the LPHA based on the findings of the investigation and contact tracing conducted in collaboration with the school. Despite this information, our district is still issuing quarantine orders and denying in-person education to students prior to the LPHA conducting a formal investigation or issuing quarantine orders. My daughter was recently quarantined by our district for being a close contact. After submitting a sunshine request, it was discovered that the individual my daughter was exposed to indeed was not confirmed positive. This individual had a couple of symptoms of COVID but did not receive a positive COVID test. There are many other viruses that exhibit similar symptoms. My daughter has special needs, autistic and nonverbal. Virtual learning for her is not an option, it doesn't work. My daughter was quarantined because she was possibly exposed to someone who maybe had COVID and ultimately lost numerous days of valuable learning. When we're dealing with children, specifically those with developmental delays, a single day of learning loss could be equivalent to a week or even more. These initial quarantine orders were issued by our district and not the LPHA. As a matter of fact, I was demanded to pick my daughter from school prior to the nursing and contacting the health department. Are you aware of our district's legal liability for issuing quarantine of healthy students when you have zero authority to do so? Have you discussed the potential legal risks affiliated with denying students an education with your attorney? Why is our district okay taking a huge liability of something that you have no authority or obligation to do? Sounds like a potential costly lawsuit to our district. The majority of the spread is happening within the community, which is the very area our health department is not contact tracing. Per Mr. Ellman, this is because they don't have the ability to enforce quarantines within the community, but the schools do and are. He's using our districts to do his health department's duties, and you're being compliant. My question is why? The fact our health department is dumping the burden of contact tracing and quarantine solely on our school districts and employees is despicable and quite frankly criminal. While I understand and appreciate your general concern for the health of our students, you have to understand quarantines are the sole duty of the LPHA. These children attend circus, concerts, birthday parties, family gatherings, weddings, camps, sports, etc., with the risk of being exposed to COVID. It is important we acknowledge that every single child at some point over these last 18 months has likely been exposed to COVID, knowingly or unknowingly, no matter how careful their family is being. It is a virus, it will spread, and it is definitely here to stay, just like the flu is. It is time to stop attempting to micromanage COVID. It is not your job. Focus on improving the academics of our students and end these outrageous quarantines so we can keep our students in the classroom where they belong.
Heather Mudd, you will be next. Right now, Billy Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Billy Sullivan. I have kids in South, Middle, and South High. I want to thank you guys for putting in time. You're like the rest of us this last month. It's been probably a couple hours a night, sleep a night pretty easily. Am I getting close? Tonight I want to address the board on facts versus fear. Over the past year and a half, all we've heard from the mainstream media, the CDC, the county health departments, and school boards is how we have to follow the science and facts to make the decisions that affect our lives. But when it comes time to make those decisions, many make those decisions based on fear, not on the facts that they've been given. Over the last year and a half, we have all been driven by fear at some point. In the beginning, my wife and I made decisions based on fear because at that time we were told that people were dying in the streets in Italy, England, France, and throughout China. So much so that the local health departments were converting the America Center into clinics and building makeshift morgues in Earth City. We were all driven by that fear. But as time went on, and we saw the facts, even though those facts were limited because it wasn't the message they were wanting to push, we saw what we were being told wasn't true. We started making more rational decisions for our family based on facts, not fear. The problem is a lot of elected officials are still making their decisions based on fear. Fear that they won't have millions of dollars in federal funding, fear that they will be charged with a crime, and fear that if something does happen, they will be held accountable. I keep hearing people in leadership roles telling us how we are going to have to learn to live with COVID. That is true to an extent, just like we have learned to live with the flu, strep throat, chickenpox, and the common cold. But I haven't seen the insane decisions being made for them that have been made for COVID. It is time for those in leadership to wake up and start leading our schools and communities instead of passing the buck back and forth from state to county, county to school board, and from municipality to municipality. We could continue to live our lives based on fear of a virus that, according to CDC, has a 99.9% survival rate in most individuals, especially our kids, or continue to chase after the fear and give up everything we have worked for, everything our founding fathers fought for, many in the military have died for, or we can make our decisions based on the facts. We're here tonight to ask you not let that fear and the misinformed state and county health departments affect your decision when it comes to our kids' lives. Vote for our kids by ending senseless quarantines, testing, and voting to ensure that we will never see a vaccine mandate before Zumwalt School District. Thank you, guys.
All right, Dina will be next. This is Heather Mudd.
Good evening. I want to speak to you this evening about two important topics, transparency and communication. I believe you're all tired of these marathon public comment sessions. We are too. But I think that you have made them worse and are continuing to make them worse because of lack of communication and transparency from the board to the stakeholders of this district. As I'm sure you remember, I'm a parent who is in favor of mitigation procedures to avoid the continued spread of COVID. 2 weeks ago, you asked district stakeholders for our opinion. You didn't tell us the purpose of the survey, its expected use. None of that was communicated to us prior to the survey or after, but several board members were communicating their opinions about those uses in certain Facebook groups. Then the survey didn't seem to go the way that some folks expected, and so there was no additional comment. Nothing about why you chose to ignore the results of the survey or how those were being used or any communication whatsoever about those. The survey was very close, but the majority of the survey, if we look at the numbers, was that some variety of masking needed to be done in the district. You chose not to follow that. What would you have done if that was a bond issue that passed by only a few votes? Would you have said, okay, we won't take your money because it only passed by a small margin? I don't think so. But the point is really about your communication and transparency. There are board members that are involved in Facebook groups, pro or anti-mask, that are supposedly giving people information about what the board is expected to do at future meetings. That shouldn't happen. Communication from the board to stakeholders should be uniform and consistent and handled in not pulling corner manner. Whether those people are right or not right about the information that they're being given, that's not the way that a board should be conducting itself. In addition, this is one of the only school districts in the state this size that does not have a district-level communications director. I think that's a shame. I think that's causing you all problems, and I think that that's a serious problem for me as a parent. Related to COVID and mitigation procedures, I received 3 different communications from 3 buildings that my children attend. They were all very different. I believe if we ask each of you 7 board members right now, you don't all have the same understanding of what you approved last week. That's because you don't have effective communication and transparency in place. I ask that you immediately work to correct this issue. We can't know where this district is going, and you can't effectively lead this district if you aren't working together and agree. The last thing I would ask is that when you do have a contentious issue where you don't all agree, that you all individually ask the folks who support your particular opinion to leave the hate alone. No board member should be threatened in any way. And if you don't believe that that happened, it's on Facebook, it's public information, you can see it. Please take action to improve the way that this board and this district function for all of the stakeholders.
Thank you. Mr. Dean,
very much, members of the Board of Education. My name is Omesi Acpinon, District Public Advocate. First of all, I'd like to thank all the board members for moving the meeting venue. It was the right move after 4 meetings of having overcrowded people left out on the sidewalk to dry, and really basically sent the message that this Board of Education didn't care what people had to say. And so I appreciate you moving this into a venue that allows for safety and for spreading out of people. It's a great use of public resource venues. I'd like to see us visit all of our high schools across the district and use all of our auditoriums and make sure that we check in with the various schools to make sure that we care about them. It's important. I'd like to see this for the standard of future meetings. Your room at the district headquarters is just we've outgrown it. It's too small. Everyone appreciates having open and free access to public meetings. No one wants to be out on the sidewalk. Again, thank you for opening up the doors to government and full access. At last Monday's Board of Education special meeting, unfortunately, we left out public citizen comments. And I think there were a number of citizens who wanted to testify and bring information forward before you voted. A lot of you are either for or against the issue that was on the agenda. And I really think that when you have special meetings, you need to open it up for public comment. All the other governments in our state do, and all the governments across the country do. It's part of a democracy and a republic. Now, if the board president said that there were statements that were made on social media and attacks on their families, that's very concerning to me personally. I don't allow bad treatment of board members and their families. In terms of their spouses and children, they're off limits, in my opinion. Politics of children and spouses should be off limits. You as board meetings should be held accountable for your decisions and your votes. Now, last month I asked for the resignation of Tom Edmonds. He's definitely a bona fide resident of the state of Florida, some 1,100 miles away. Tom Edmonds brags on social media and throughout the community that he lives in Florida. After talking to many residents across the community, they think it's outrageous and it's outrageous that something like that can be allowed to happen, that an elected official could be allowed to hold a public office from 1,100 miles away to govern. As I asked Mr. Edmonds to resign, evidently he's sitting here, so he hasn't. I will continue looking at seeking a quo warranto in state circuit court. It's a violation of Chapter 162, the revised state statute in Missouri, that he took an oath that he was a resident of our school district. But he is not. Therefore, vacating and forfeiting his district once he became a Florida resident.
Time has expired, Mr. Pinal.
Can I bring up one other item?
Your time has expired. Everyone here has had 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Next item is the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve. Powers, second, please. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Financial reports, Mr. Orr.
Good evening, members of the board. I direct your attention to the monthly financial report, specifically the September financial summary. You've had the financial statements in this report since last week. So I'll just briefly summarize. Monthly fund balances for September total $41,670,571.82. At month end, we had $36.8 million invested as shown on the investment schedule. Monthly revenues for September totaled $8,017,070.25. This is typical for September, for the month of September. It's in line with my expectations. There were minimal variances and really nothing unusual to report. As far as expenses go, expenses for the month of September totaled $20,535,404.12. And again, expenses are in line with my expectations for the month, and I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary unusual. I don't know if anybody has any questions about anything, but.
Any questions for Mr. Orr regarding financial reports? If there are none, I need a motion to approve. Callahan, second. Evans, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business, Dr. DeBrey.
First item under new business is policy development. Paul Myers handles our policy for the board. So, Paul.
Great, members of the board, you have a policy packet that was submitted. It's a small one this time around, and essentially what we're looking at is the main focus is splitting our in-house virtual course offerings from the MOCAP offerings. That's on the recommendation of the MSBA to clarify the procedures. So all of that documentation you're seeing is really just related to that. And then 2 cleanup policies based on board feedback related to language specific to long-term suspensions and suspensions as opposed to over-the-counter medications. So nothing incredibly technical in there, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Otherwise, just looking for your approval.
That's a fun read, 62 pages.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Any questions for Dr. Myers regarding the policy development? If not, I need a motion to approve as presented. Powers, second. Moore. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is a custodial services pilot program for Zumwalt School District. Just like many organizations are struggling with our support staff needs. And you're aware that we have a number of vacant positions, custodial positions, food service positions, bus drivers, just like a lot of organizations. Paul's come up with a plan that may address the issue of custodial staff. I want him to review that for you this evening.
And thank you, Dr. Bray. Members of the board, just to summarize this, what we're looking to do here is create a pilot program with your approval that would allow us at our evening shifts to move to a team clean philosophy across the district on a limited basis. What this will allow us to do is hopefully, and that's why we're calling it a pilot, get a little bit more efficiency by training custodial crews who are a member of this new designation to clean as specialists rather than cleaning a universal route. So not to bore you with the details, but if you're a custodian in our night crews right now, you run a standard route and you're responsible for all the various components of cleaning that go into that, whether it's bathrooms, classrooms, all the different elements. In this model, you would take a specialist, say bathrooms, and they would be responsible for that task building-wide. We've looked at a couple of different districts that are doing this. They're not doing it on the scale that we would be if we ramped this out. But what we'd like to do is see if we can get some efficiency out of this. We would not be adding positions, we'd just be recategorizing. This job itself is more demanding because it requires travel between buildings. So what I'd like to see with your approval is to let us roll this out and see what kind of efficiency gains we get out of it. The district that we've studied in particular that stands out to me is located in Salt Lake City. One of the things that's a notable difference is they're doing a specialist cleaning philosophy at a high school level, not across the district. But when we talk to them about our concept, and I also want to take a moment to say Aaron Williams in the personnel department has done a tremendous amount of work on this. They're intrigued to see what our process looks like, see if they could maybe implement something of that nature as well. So we're asking for approval for 10 positions. It would be 2 5-person teams, and because of the demands associated with it and then some related cost savings, we'd like to add a $2 an hour incentive for that position in the hopes that that also helps us with recruitment. So I'm happy to answer the questions about it. I think it all boils down to efficiency and trying to get out in the market in a little bit more competitive wage, and then see how that evolves as we implement this. So any questions you might have, I'm happy to go into those.
Any questions for Dr. Myers regarding the pilot program for the custodial services? If there is none, I will take the motion to approve the recommendation as presented. Powers, second Callahan, all in favor say aye. Any object? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Comments from the Board of Education. Mr. George, we'll start with you.
Well, he's gone, I don't think. Dr. Pat Brown, congratulations on all the hard work put in on that. I do like a bigger venue, but I don't like the lights. I can't hardly see anybody out there. But that's about all I've got.
Thank you. Mr. Bell.
Again, congratulations to Dr. Brown. That's a man with notable work. I would like to comment on my understanding of the function of the county health department, not just in St. Charles County, but the concept across this country. I recently checked how these county health departments are funded, and typically they get about 1.8% of the healthcare budget across our country. And in some states, the Midwest, the Southeast and Southwest, you have county health departments that are expected to do contact tracing and a lot of other functions for about $5,000 a year. It's not unheard of in the Southwest or county health departments that literally have bake sales to stay in business. They don't get sick in the county. The other thing that I want to comment on, Mr. Emmons is entitled to stay here. There has been Missouri State Supreme Court that had opinions that they issued in 1972, 3, and I believe 1974, concerning the status of Kit Bond. He went on to be governor and I believe senator. You can stop beating that hollow drum. So,
With the bigger venue tonight. Congratulations to Dr. Pat Brown. Had a privilege of meeting with him and Jim Waters this week on another issue that's part of the program. It was very productive. Got to see the new Professional Development Center for the first time. Very impressive building. Very glad to have that as a tool for our district as large as we are in a facility like that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Emmons.
Mike, I want to say again, listen to both of you out there quietly, and I'm very proud of the work that you two did to bring this board back together in unified scenes. It means a lot to the board and to the community. Listen, there is a lot of things on both sides, but I want to echo the appreciation I heard from the appreciation of the statement made by our first speaker tonight. We really talked about the idea of reaching out and having conversations and using that to build relationships. That's all too important. I know I and other board members have done that, asked for any meeting from any person or any side throughout all of this, and we've gotten to get in return. Some have taken us up on that, and I think through that we've created a lot of really good relationships. Others haven't, including speaking from the background. But that's okay, because everybody has that right to do those things. I will continue to be happy to do that, and I know many of you will as well. So, look forward to continuing that process.
Sir.
My comment is pretty similar to what Tom said, really, that communication is important. But I want to be clear to everybody listening, everybody sitting here, that communication is not following me with my child in the car. Communication is not posting my picture on Facebook and asking about my meal plan or my exercise plan. I know I'm fat. I look in the mirror. Thank you for calling it out to thousands of people on social media. It's not necessary, and that's not communication. Anybody that is asked to sit down and talk to me, I have sat down and talked to, and I will always continue to do that. I won't answer emails where somebody tells me I'm disgusting, that I'm stupid, or I don't know what I'm talking about. But I will always make myself available to somebody, whether they agree with me or I agree with them, because it's important to learn from that. And I have made wonderful friends with people who we have opposing views. Our district has to come together, and that requires communication, not hate. So to echo what Amy said and what Tom said, kindness is the only thing that's going to get there with communication.
If you have not heard my words, I'll just reiterate for a second. I spoke my mind at our special meeting this past week, and I appreciate you willingness to work with me and to bring this together, so thank you very much. To Mr. Emmons, and to that point, I have been on this board for nearly 21 years, which is crazy for me to think that many years have gone by, and I've seen this district grow from 9,000 to 19,000, and now back to 17,369, or whatever it is. But in my many years on the board, I've seen many school board members, and I will tell you that Mr. Emmons and I have not always seen eye to eye, but we do respect each other in our opinions, and I've never seen anyone that works as hard as he does and as committed as he is to this school district and to this community. So to any naysayers, he's here because he was elected and because he performs his duties at a top notch. That's what I'm going to say. With that, I think Dr. Bray had something that you wanted to share.
Yeah. You know, I was at Sunday, I was at the YMCA and I was working out and I ran into Don Osman. And Don, I knew Don when I first came to the school district. His wife was the president of the school board, Cindy Osman, who later was a teacher, school board member, later went on to be a state representative. And Cindy was the president when I was first hired as an assistant superintendent, and that was 40 years ago. So she was also president when I was selected to be superintendent, which was 37 years ago. And, you know, I kind of take stock of where I'm at in my life. And so this year, 40 years in Fort Zumwalt, 37 years as superintendent. I'm the longest serving superintendent in the state of Missouri, and 53 years as an educator. Started in 1969 in the Pattonville School District. And I wanted to tell the board that it's my intent to retire at the end of next school year. Not this school year. I don't think I want to go out the way the last 2 years have been rough for everybody. And that's not what I want to do. So I want to retire at the end of next school year, which would be 22-23. And the board has wisely had a succession plan in mind now for a number of years. And therefore, I want to use my last year, 22-23, to work with Paul Myers, who is our deputy superintendent and has been selected as superintendent-elect for 22-23. And I would spend much of my time in that last year working with him in transition. It's the same thing we did in 1984 when Larry Doyle was our superintendent. I became superintendent-elect. He worked with me his last year, and basically we just kind of switched places about mid-year after he, tutored me in what I needed to know. And of course, in those days, we had about 8,200 kids. And today we have 17,359. So Paul will send the right message to the staff that things will be consistent and will continue. Henry St. Pierre, who's been assistant superintendent now for a number of years, as assistant superintendent of special services, and now of resources, will become the deputy superintendent for Paul. So, we'll work towards that, and it'll be a smooth transition, be seamless, and I think I will do what I've always tried to do, which is work hard, not let let anybody down and make this school district a better place to be. So with that said, I've given you a letter of retirement, not at the end of this year, 22, 23, and I will give you everything I got during that period of time. Thank you very much.
I need this board to go into closed session under Missouri statute 610.021. Roll call. Do I need a motion? Give me a motion. Callahan, second. Howard, roll call, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Craig.
Yes.
Tony. John.
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes. All right, give us a few minutes. We'll need to clear the room, and then we'll have our closed session.